In terms of getting back to the basics, it starts with you. So given the impact of the pandemic and the amount of uncertainty that it has brought into our day-to-day lives, what practical tips can you provide us with to help fight burnout and stress?
Absolutely. Such an important thing to discuss. You know, with COVID, what it has brought is so much uncertainty and so many factors that are outside of our control. So when what we really need to do at this point in time to reduce our stress and reduce our anxiety is to identify what are the things we can control. Because if we start to focus on the things that are outside of our control, it just creates more stress for ourselves. And I mean, let's face it, globally, within each of our countries, within our cities, within our homes, there are factors that are outside of our control. So what are the factors that we can control? And that really is our self-awareness and our self-care practices. Now, self-awareness is such an important one. In fact, for me, it is key to this whole conversation. Because as I mentioned earlier, when you're in that state of high performance and it's so ongoing and you're under a constant state of stress, you're not even aware. You lose your awareness, as you said, Nicole. Sometimes someone has to actually point it out to you. And we don't always like that, do we? So the first step is to acknowledge, to really acknowledge where we're at. And that's what today is really about. It's about actually for you to take time and think about, where am I at? Am I actually coping? If in a high performance environment and as high performers, that is not an easy thing to do. We never like to acknowledge that there's any form of weakness, what we view as weakness, or humanness rather. And so acknowledging that is one of the first steps. And sometimes it takes our partner or our spouse or the nag that keeps coming. You keep doing that, you keep doing that. And we're like, fob it off, don't talk about it, I don't want to hear it. Actually, we need to listen more than we just hear what they say. Number two is acceptance. And when I work in therapy with one-on-one, I see it over and over again. Acceptance is the first step to healing. In other words, acceptance is the first step to taking the next step forward. So accepting where you're at, not fighting against it, not denying it, and just saying, okay, this is where I'm at, because that allows you to seek the help then that you need. And then thirdly is to take action. And action is the next step forward. And I love this saying, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing. And so taking action is really about being intentional about our self-care and what practices we put in place. And I thought just with what I've seen a lot of, and globally as well as in our country and in our cities, and a lot of what is out there with the work from home situation people are battling with is, number one is routine. Get a routine into place. And it sounds so simple, but it's about getting back to the basics. If there is no routine, there's no direction to your day, there's no structure. And let's face it, COVID did that, because it was very nice in the beginning. We could say, oh, I can just sit in bed and do my work, or I can just pop a jacket on. And we've seen the videos where, you know, people have their pajama pants or whatever with a jacket on. You know, it was a great thing in the beginning, but actually over time, that lack of routine, we need to have a routine in place to give us direction, to give us a sense of purpose, and to hold ourselves accountable, so that at the end of the day, we look back and say, I did it. I got all those things done, got a good morning routine. I got a walk in, I made my bed, I got dressed, and I'm ready, and performance will be better at the end of the day in your personal life, but also at work, because you are focused. You've got the right focus. So the basics of a routine, especially if you're in a place where you're struggling with a burnout or you may be struggling with anxiety, routine is key. Secondly, work from home, boundaries, blurred boundaries, no boundaries. If there's no routine, there are no boundaries. And so by putting routine in place, we start to realize, wait a minute, I'm spending a little bit too much time. Gosh, I spent like the whole week. I only finished work at 8 o'clock. That's not on. So boundaries, personal boundaries, with the amount of time we spend online personally, with the boundaries we put in place in terms of what hours we're going to bed, the boundaries professionally within the workday. Are we having boundaries on the length of meetings? Do we have breaks in the day? Do you take your lunch break? Do you look after yourself from that perspective? Because those boundaries are really, really important in just giving you time to recover. And then finally is gratitude. Now, this sounds like the simplest, doesn't it? But actually, it's the hardest, because it's at a time when we look around and it's hard to sometimes be grateful, isn't it? It's very easy to complain because of all we see in the news we get. And so gratitude is about firstly being grateful every morning, thinking of one thing you can be grateful for when you wake up in the morning, because that will set your thoughts in the right way, and your thoughts impact on your emotion and they impact on your behavior. And the second thing is to show gratitude to someone else, because you will be amazed. That response that you get in saying thank you to someone will have such a huge impact on you. It's going to lift you both. And so that simple word of thank you, which we say so seldom, especially in a high performance environment, it's competitive. We're trying to get ourselves out there. It's a drive. But the reality is we can still say thank you and we can still be grateful. And I think finally to say to seek help if you need it. If you're in a space where you need help, acknowledge it, accept it. So I think, these things that I've touched on are just three basic things, basic principles. It's a short space of time, but they're three things that applying those can already just change the way we look after ourselves, impact on our own personal lives, but also impact on our performance in the workplace.